Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to NASCSP's ROMA Next Generation Kickoff webinar for Nationally Certified ROMA Trainers and Certified Community Action Professionals. I'm Jovita, your moderator. Today's webinar on ROMA Next Generation will be presented by Jenae Bjelland, Executive Director of NASCSP, Jennie Chaffin, Director of the Office of Community Services, Denise Harlow, CEO of the Community Action Partnership, and Barbara Mooney, Director of the Association of Nationally Certified ROMA Trainers. Before we begin, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. All attendees are on mute. If you have questions during the webinar, you can ask questions using the chat option on the webinar toolbar. The toolbar is located on the right-hand side of your screen. There, you'll see a text box where you can type a question for all panelists. Questions will be read aloud and answered during the Q&A portions of the webinar. When typing your questions, please identify the topic and slide your question relates to, as well as the panelists you'd like to respond. In order to keep to our schedule, if we don't have time for all questions, we will compile your questions into an FAQ following the webinar. The webinar will be recorded and will be posted to the NASCSP website. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Jennie Chaffin.
Thank you, Jovita. As Jovita was making those comments, I was here thinking about, I don't know that we've ever had an event, whether physical or virtual, where we had certified ROMA trainers and CCAPs together. But when you think about the power of those two groups together, that's pretty exciting. I wish we were all physically together, because that would be so much fun to have ROMA trainers and CCAPs in one place at the same time. But we feel so strongly about the leadership and the capacity of certified community action professionals and certified ROMA trainers that we wanted to plan this webinar, this kickoff webinar, and really give you a leadership assignment about helping us to get ROMA Next Generation out there. This launch of ROMA Next Generation marks a really critical moment in our movement, a movement that we've all invested a lot in, or we wouldn't have got that certification, right? So I know you're some great folks to help us. Since 2012, we've really been focused on implementing some great improvements to the Community Services Block Grant. We've successfully launched the organizational standards, and we're now in our first year of implementation. We've moved forward with establishing state and federal accountability measures, and with that, we've included some really robust surveys of our customers. Here at OCS, we've surveyed the states, and states have surveyed eligible entities. And that whole suite of work around the state and federal accountability measures is really impressive, and I think going to work in tandem with our organizational standards to strengthen us for the future. And now here we are with the third prong of this approach, launching ROMA Next Generation. All of these efforts, everything that we're doing in this space is about helping improve services for low-income people in distressed communities. That is at the heart of all of this work, and it's why we're doing it. We face a lot of challenges today. We have a really demanding task in front of us on how to impact the lives of those people we serve. Our changing world requires more dynamic approaches and innovation if we're going to have a real and lasting and extensive impact. With ROMA Next Generation, we seek to move from reporting to learning and improving. And as we talk about the tools today and ROMA Next Generation, you're going to see that we're really trying to link up information about the people we serve, the kinds of services we provide, and the results that those services achieve. For some of our colleagues and some of our sister and brother organizations, these changes may be a bit of a stretch. But I really believe our network is strong, and in real, true community action fashion and in pursuit of living your CCAP vision and values, I think we can help everyone, every agency get to this new place that we're trying to get to through ROMA Next Generation. We're going to need everyone in the network engaged and thinking deeply about ROMA Next Generation, and that's not just in the next 30 days, but really in the next 4 months. Together, I think we can craft a product that works well for every agency and really moves us to a new place in this community action movement. My final comment in opening here, I just want to thank all of the national partners. I want to thank the folks who served on a real intensive ROMA Next Generation work group that we've been doing a lot with since last fall. And I want to thank all of you for agreeing to be a part of this next effort. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Jenae Bjelland from NASCSP. I want to reiterate everything that Jeannie said. We are so excited that ROMA Next Generation has been posted, and we could not have gotten here without all of your help, your support, and your comments. Today's session we've developed specifically for all of you, CCAP and ROMA trainers. If you are our change agents, we need your help in getting this message out, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But an example of this, Denise and I have been talking about tracking who's been clicking through our emails, and we are still only, sadly, at like 33% of people who are going through to the website. We need more people to do that. This is the time for the network to vote, to craft, and to help us move this whole initiative forward. So today what we're going to be doing is that we're going to be working with all of you and giving you a quick update on all of the key elements of the packet that we have posted onto our NASCSP website. Each piece of the ROMA Next Generation packet is on our website, and you can find that. We've also created a component guide. That component guide links all the actual documents, the webinars, the frequently asked questions, discussion guides, and the surveys that will be posted as well. We have made this into a living website. Things are going to be changing. In fact, we had a webinar yesterday for our state associations, RPICs, and state CCG offices, where it was requested that we make a PDF of all of the components together so it was easier to print and post that. So we did do that, and that's posted to our website. So you can go to each individual component, or you can print the whole packet. I will warn you that the whole packet is over 100 pages, but it is all together. So that's one of the helps that we have. We have a series of webinars that we ask for you to assist us getting information out. These webinars are going to start next week. We'll talk about those at the end of this webinar. So what is this whole process? The clearance process. OCS has been really gracious in trying to ensure that the network fully understands what's happening with this change in the CCGIS annual report to the CCG annual report and all the updates to the ROMA Next Generation components. As such, we're doing this initial comment period through NASCSP, which is March 3rd through April 1st. After that comment period, we will take all of the feedback that we've received and we'll figure out what we need to update with the forms, instructions, what we need to clarify. Then we'll go through the official, formal 60-day OMB comment period. We have that set to happen June through July. Then after that comment period, we'll look at the feedback that we receive. We'll hope that it won't be as much as this initial comment period because we'll have answered most of your questions. And then we'll do the final 30-day OMB comment period, September through October. It is critical that we get these on target because we want to ensure that we can get this OMB clearance before the changeover in administration. So how can you really help us? Again, I cannot reiterate enough how important this initial comment period is. This is your opportunity to become familiar with all the changes that we've made to the forms and to be able to provide input to us. We are developing surveys that we have broken out into 5 different categories. We have a high-level survey, that is Survey 1. That's going to be reviewing the national theory of change and the national goals. Then we have what we call our mid-level surveys. Survey 2 is the community-level work, and that's the community level on every aspect, including collective impact. Survey 3 are the individual and family-level work, so that's where you'll see the demographics, the services, and the outcomes. And then Survey 4 is the CCG expenditures and community action agency leverage resources. And this is going to include the expenditures, the resources that you have, as well as a new component on agency capacity. And then finally, we have a high-level survey, Survey 5, tying it all together. This isn't a change just in the reporting system. This is a change in the mentality that ROMA, results-oriented management accountability, really is about performance management, and that you at the local agency level, at the state level, and at the national level, we should be able to tell what impact we're having for the families that we serve in the communities. We need to be able to do an analysis on how we're connecting people to services to outcomes, see which services in our local communities then relate to outcomes, and see if we make any modifications to our delivery that we do in our service mechanism right now. So there's a whole new level of analysis that we're going to be talking about, and this high-level survey kind of together will be focusing on that. So let's get started since we have a lot to cover. I'm going to turn it over to Denise to talk about what you can do with us.
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, Denise Harlow with the Community Action Partnership, and when Jenae says we have a lot to cover, we certainly do. If you heard a 100-plus page packet to print off and understand, we're going to go through a lot of information pretty quickly today, but as Jeannie mentioned, we pulled together the CCAPs and the Nationally Certified ROMA Trainers for a reason. You do have a sphere of influence in the network, whether it's within your own organization, within your state association, possibly within your state office, and certainly among the national partners. We recognize that all of you have paid a special commitment to community action. You've gone through certain hoops to either be a ROMA trainer, and there are a number of hoops, as you know, to go through to become a ROMA trainer, and same thing on the CCAP side. Those are not easy lifts, which tells us that you have the passion, the dedication, and the commitment to help us make this big lift for the network, and we're going to need your help. You are the leaders in the Community Action Network, and again, you have really demonstrated your commitment. And as Jeannie mentioned, this isn't a 30-day commitment for what we're asking you today. We're going to need your leadership and assistance with ROMA Next Generation over the next few months. You heard Jenae talk about the comment periods. You saw comment periods that run all the way through October, but we know that even at the end of October, we're not done with the work that we have to do. We know that our training programs, our conferences, our events, our in-services are going to need to be modified, changed, and really made to be high impact. So CCAPs. As a CCAP, you know that you understand how the theory of change, it tells us how community action is different, what makes our approach to service different. We believe that you're going to be able to link ROMA Next Generation to the history and purpose of community action because you've studied the history, you've demonstrated expertise about the history, and now it's time to add the next chapter of the history of community action. We know that you have researched and taught, tested on, and understand good management theory. You know that better outcome reporting is tied directly to 21st century leadership thinking. You know what the national trades and research are showing about human services and how we show our outcomes. And also, finally, how we tell our story of community action. I know we're all hungry for how we can talk about the impact of community action, and we're going to need you as CCAPs to understand and tie ROMA Next Gen to that story. Now, ROMA trainers, you too had a big lift to become a ROMA trainer. And when you take a look here at ROMA Next Generation, some elements that we're going to be relying on you for. You're going to know why that needs assessment, that community assessment process, what the importance is of identifying levels of need at the community and family levels. You're going to know that we need to connect the needs to realistic outcomes and appropriate services and strategies. A certain cartoon might come to mind about miracles happening, those of you who are ROMA trainers. And certainly the principle behind setting performance targets at the family level for the number you will serve and the number who achieve the outcome. You know why we ask about targets and why we then report on percentage of targets met. You understand what that says about understanding the business we're in of helping families and the importance of working and talking about those targets as a network. So as leaders, you are in unique positions to help us carry the water and help us make this lift as a network. You can help us get the message out. We're going to need you to be standard bearers in some ways out here in the network. Some states are forming task groups or other regional or statewide meetings. Sign up, show up, be engaged in those meetings. Many of you might have state associations or other newsletters that need to be done either within your agency or within your state. Volunteer to write an article. Volunteer to talk about a segment of ROMA Next Generation and explain it to your colleagues. Offer to facilitate a workshop at your next state or regional association conference. Oftentimes, we'll do our one-day ROMA training, for instance, but how valuable could it not be to, at a state association event, to have a couple of sessions focused on ROMA and engaging ROMA Next Generation? We're going to talk later certainly about engaging the national partners in those elements, but we're here to empower and charge all of you with helping us with that task. Again, we're going to need you to provide leadership. We hope that you will work together to create opportunities for local agencies to be talking about ROMA Next Generation in partnership with their state office. We're hoping that you will attend webinars. We know we have a series next week that we really kind of do a deep dive, and I know many of you will be here in DC for the NCAP conference, but you know these things are recorded, and those things are, you can access them later, so we hope that you will take the time, all of that free time you all have to listen to them, but they are critically important to understand. And again, work with your colleagues to make your local agency become a leader in ROMA Next Generation. The field is wide open for people to step up, and we hope that you do. If you're with a local agency, make sure that you reach out and try to make a connection with your state office and your state CAP association to let them know that you are a resource. Offer your assistance. If you're at the state association or the state CSBG office, again, see if there are folks either within your state or even a neighboring state. We know that under org standards that we're talking with ROMA trainers about sharing expertise across state borders. In some ways, states are artificial boundaries in community action. We're here to share our resources and our knowledge with all of our colleagues. So I hope that you will reach out and share information. We know that we work within a regional model under the RPICs, and I know many of you participate in your regional conferences and trying to find those opportunities to be leaders at those events by providing training, connection, and information. So hopefully that sets the stage and puts no pressure on you, of course, but we are looking for your leadership, and with this, I'm going to turn it over to Jenae.
Thanks, Denise. So I want to go over the key elements just in a little bit of a different manner. I also want to reiterate that if you have any questions, to use your chat function and to send it to all panelists, as we will be answering questions at the end of the presentation and if we can, even during the presentation. First, understanding what is new. The theory of change, services and strategy reports, baseline demographics, community efforts and progress, and family stability indicators. These are all brand new components that we need your eyes on. Then we've had some refinements, revisions to other areas, such as the national performance indicators for individuals, families, and communities. We have updated the practicing of targeting. We have an emphasis on unduplicated counts for those of who are served, as well as getting that unduplicated count of individuals receiving services. We've updated the CCAP expenditure report and the resources administrators as well. And then what we really are going to be doing is that we want you to be able to ask us any kind of questions as you go through this, and if there's something that you can provide recommendations for providing clarity, we need to know that information. I will point out that on the NASCSP website, again, you can see our component guide, and our component guide does state when the reporting is projected to start for each component, and we've even created a link for you to see what your state CCG program reporting period is, since we have states who do it July through June, October through December, or October through September, and January through December. So that shall help clarify those kinds of questions. So we're going to start with our first key component, which is the national theory of change and the national goals.
Great, thanks, Jenae. This is Denise. Let's jump into the theory of change to start us off. Also, just to make sure folks know that that will be the first survey that is issued. It's a very high-level survey, and then we hope to get your feedback on the overall theory of change. As many of you know, this has gone through several iterations over the last few months, years, I guess, in development of ROMA Next Generation. We know this is one of the first pieces we tackled, and it has morphed over time, but we're very pleased with how it's turned out. I know it's a pretty small piece here on your slide, but I hope that you will print it out. I have it hanging over my desk. I think it's always a good thing to understand the big picture of what our network is trying to do. So you'll see here that we have a construct that at the bottom is the foundation of our network, right? The national network of 1,000 local agencies, state associations, state offices, and federal partners that support the CSBG and the broader community action mission, and we're mobilizing communities to fight poverty. That's really the foundation of everything that we're doing. As you see, as we build up through the theory, on the left-hand side, a good theory of change has what you actually believe. What makes our network different than other networks of human services providers, change agent, anti-poverty mobilizers? We believe that community action is unique and different. And there's comments or portions of the principal statements that get to some of those elements. On the right-hand side, you'll see our performance management system. We think that is another core pillar of the theory of change. Many of you have seen slides that look like this corner of the theory of change. How well does our network operate is really measured in some ways by the organizational standards, the state and federal accountability measures, and certainly the ROMA results-oriented management and accountability system. Whereas when we get to what difference does our network make, then we really try to get into the national performance indicators and talking about truly the impact of our organization. As we move up the ladder, then you'll see the services and strategies, services that we provide to families, strategies that we're implementing for community change, then ending up with 3 national goals. The 3 national goals: individuals and families with low incomes are stable and achieve economic security. You'll see here that this moves off of the terminology self-sufficiency. Those of you who know the 6 national goals like the back of your hand, you'll definitely see some differences here. But we have combined these into 3 core national goals. The second one, communities where people with low incomes live are healthy and offer economic opportunity. And third, people with low incomes are engaged and active in building opportunities in their communities. And I know, I think if we were at the last ROMA in-service, we talked a lot about the concept of not low-income families, right? It's people with low incomes. We're very distinct with our language here. We believe that language matters and that this language is intentional. It's important to note that the old goal 4, when we talked about partnerships, you'll now find when we get to the strategy section, will be talked about there, not so much as a result, but more as a strategy. And goal 5, agency capacity, again, you'll see in the theory of change, we talk about the national infrastructure of organizations, associations, and states being some of that core element of how we build our network. And we're also going to be talking about agency capacity later in today's presentation when we get to the CSBG expenditure report. But again, the high-level survey that you'll be getting later this week will give you a chance to provide feedback on the theory of change, and we hope that you find that it gives a good representation of the core components of the Community Action Network. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Barbara Mooney to take us through the next steps.
Barbara, you're still on mute.
How's that?
Perfect.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Denise. Setting the foundation of our discussion about ROMA Next Gen with the theory of change. I'm going to focus on the community level efforts and outcomes of our network. The very first survey, as Denise mentioned, is on theory of change. The second one is about community level work. It's the second because we know how important community level work is. We believe that community and family outcomes are intertwined, and this has been part of our legislation from the beginning of time. And what ROMA Next Gen is redoubles our focus on community level outcomes and efforts. And so what you'll need to have when you go to do your survey is the list of community level strategies, the national performance indicators for community level, and then a document called Levels of Effort in Progress tool. You'll note as we talk about community level work that we're going to reference the term strategies at the community level. And then later when we talk about family level efforts and outcomes, we'll use the word services. So that's something new for all of us, and it's something to put in your mind as a way of thinking about distinction between what you do at the community level and what you do at the family level. This is brand new. This is a list of the services at the community level that you'll be asked to talk about, and those strategies follow the domains that you see listed: employment, education, and cognitive development, infrastructure, and so on. An example of one of the categories, employment, would show you that you would be conducting living wage campaigns or minimum wage campaigns, or working on job creation in your community. You could be talking about employer education, about issues related to people with low income. So these are a sampling of the strategies that have been discussed, and you see that we also have an other category there, so that things that might be missed in the employment strategy section could be identified. We will be asking in ROMA Next Gen for these to be reported, and there's a report form that you'll be able to draw down. You'll find it. Please note the color here. This is a blue level color, and I'll talk about what that means as we go forward. But in this example, the agency will be talking about how many strategies they implemented. Probably only one living wage campaign, but they might have done multiple job fairs and so on. These are really counts of outputs. And I want to make sure you know that if an agency is not doing any of these strategies, if for some reason they don't feel that this is the kind of strategy they should be engaged in, that just means that they will not report on it. This report is a menu, and it's really intended to capture what's happening across the country, so we may not have a large number of these strategies being reported. But what will happen is that once they're reported at the agency level, they'll get rolled up automatically to a state-level report. And you'll see that the state-level report is a green color, and it shows the total number of agencies that are reporting on the different strategies in the state. And in this one, the example shows 13 out of the 25 agencies in the state reported on employment strategies for community-level change. And then again, these reports will be auto-calculated and rolled up to a national report, and you'll see the national report is purple, and it shows the number of states that reported on the strategies, and this all happens automatically. The color coding that we just saw is going to be repeated again at the family level, so you'll see that carried through. So we talked about the outputs, the strategies, but now let's talk about the outcomes, the performance indicators, which tell a story of the community level impact of the CSBG dollars. This set of indicators is a common set of measures that is going to track the CSBG network's performance. And we want to make sure that all of the agency's activities, not just the CSBG activities, are reported in the NPIs. And what this will do is help the agencies and the states analyze what's working and to help really identify how to improve interventions. There are a couple assumptions that are embedded in this reporting process. We have a lot of discussion about, well, how do you do community level impact? How do you change something that would affect the whole county or the whole service area? We serve 10 communities or 10 counties in our state. How could we possibly have an impact on that whole space? Well, you'll be asked to identify what you mean by the community for your project and your initiative. You'll see that in just a minute. But that will be locally defined and really will depend on what you have identified in your needs assessment as being important to address. You'll not only be reporting on the outcome, in 5 or 10 years when you actually get to the outcome, but you'll also be reporting on interim progress as you move through work with your partners or work in your community, and that will be part of the community level efforts and progress tool that you'll see in a minute. Again, only the indicators that apply to your work will be part of your reporting process. And there's an other that will help you think about adding things that might be helpful to us. There are, again, the indicators are arranged by domains. There are 6 domains here at the community level, and there are 29 indicators for Goal 2 and 2 for Goal 3. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. But let's look at this progress concept. We know that community level work takes a long time, and so we address the issue of needing progress measures as they link to the desired long-term indicators that we've identified. And so you'll see a new report called the Community Level Efforts and Progress Report that first asks you, it's a question asked of every agency, do you do community level work, yes or no? If no, you'll be asked to describe why you don't, and if yes, you'll be asked to talk about how you do your community level work, and it might be more than one of these. You might check all 4 of them or 1 or 2 of them. Do you do work independently, such as you might be developing housing, you have a grant to develop low-income housing and you do it independently? Or are you doing it with partnership or with a couple of other agencies or organizations? Or are you a backbone member of a collective impact initiative, or a contributing member of a collective impact initiative? That collective impact is something that we're going to be talking more about as we go forward, but briefly, it's a group of different sector actors who come together for a commitment to a common agenda for solving these community level wicked problems. And there's been an identification of 5 important conditions that the collective impact initiatives have in common: a common agenda, shared measurement systems, mutually reinforcing activities, continuous communication, and a backbone support organization. So there's going to be quite a bit more information about this on the community level webinar, but we wanted to make sure that you understand the importance of this particular kind of collaboration. The community level efforts in progress report is provided to you on the NASCSP website in 2 forms, both a PDF form and an Excel spreadsheet form, and so that you'll be able to play with it a little bit. You'll be able to see what it looks like printed out, but you'll also be able to look at the drop-down menus and see how when you identify an issue area, there's a drop-down that links to the NPIs so that you can select one of them as the ultimate expected outcome of your collaborative, your community level work, and also an other that helps you to customize it. There's a rainbow across the bottom of different domains, and you'll be able to look at all of those in the Excel spreadsheet. You'll see expected duration is there to identify how long this community project is expected to take. And then you'll be able to talk specifically about different pieces of your progress, and it's outlined for you based on the collective impact work, where you can talk about how you're doing a common agenda, being a backbone, or building infrastructure, and so on. One of the domain areas in this area that we've talked about is civic engagement and community involvement. And the interesting thing about this is that it really, it provides for an opportunity to track community level indicators that really show changes in the communities that are being served. And for an example, this includes all of the people in your community, because it's civic engagement and community involvement. So it might include partners or funders or policymakers, volunteers, board members, and so on, regardless of their income status. but it also might be people with low income, and therefore the indicators involved in this community level domain will provide measurement for goal 3. People with low income are engaged and active in building opportunities. You'll see that there's also some measures at the family level for goal 3. But let's look at the performance indicators, the number of community members working to improve conditions in the community, the people who donate time, and the people who participate in specific kind of activities such as public hearings, forums, advisory boards, and so on. The numbers related to hours of volunteer work are included in the resources administered report later on in this discussion. And then there's an other indicator also in this domain as well. And then the goal 3 indicator is that these are most probably not necessarily participants of the agency. It might be the folks that are in the community, in the neighborhood where you're working. But we would be counting the number of low-income people. On the next slide. The number of people with low income who participate in with community action to improve service delivery or conditions in the community, and those who maintain and acquire leadership roles with community action or other organizations, and then also another listed there as well. So that's an overview of the community level performance and efforts and work and outcomes, and I'm going to turn it over to Jenae to talk about the family level.
Thanks, Barbara. So we do have these broken down into different components. We have the community, now we're focusing on individuals and family. We are going to have a survey for the individual and family work. This is survey 3. The documents that you'll be referencing when going through survey 3 is going to be the demographics and characteristics, the individual and family level services, the individual and family level national performance indicators, and a new possibility for an individual and family stability indicator option. I want to point out that the All ROMA Next Generation component document has all of these together, that we will be posting surveys as soon as they're ready, that we are making the surveys into, they're going to be in SurveyMonkey, but we'll also give you a PDF so you can see what the questions are, and that we're also allowing for states and regions to submit one survey for multiple agencies if that's how you decide to do it. We want to be very thoughtful about this whole process. So first, let's talk about the demographics and characteristics. The biggest change that we have for demographics and characteristics is that we have 2 separate reports. As we looked at every component of the CCGIS and we tried to figure out what story we were telling with it, we found that when we looked at what was traditionally known as Section G, that some of the demographic and characteristics information could change over time, and that we were getting reports from people at when the report was due. So we've added a new report that we're currently calling a baseline report, and this is for all of the individuals and families when they first engage with the community action agencies. Then we have a separate report called the All Individuals and Households, and this is for everybody that you've served during the reporting period. I'll go into those in a little bit more detail. What hasn't changed is that we are still asking for unduplicated counts of individuals and families throughout your whole agency, not just those served with CCG. That we are asking again that this is collected where it makes sense, that if it doesn't make sense to get full characteristic or demographic information from an information referral call, from a bus token, that we're not enforcing that you do that, but we want to have as much information as possible. Our goal is to be able to talk about who are the individuals and families that we are serving in our communities, what do they look like, and then eventually link them to the services and the outcomes. So let's talk more about this new baseline report. This report has been created to really get the profile of the individuals and households at the time that they first engage with the community action agency. We know that we're going to have to work on some of the definitions about this, what that really means, but what we really are trying to get with this is before anybody receives a service from community action agencies, what do they look like? What are their needs? And then eventually, we know that baseline makes people think of analysis. This can be done at the local level, that you eventually might want to see when people first come in to your agency what they look like and what they look like when they leave. That's not a current component reported at the state or the national level, but we wanted to be able to tell that story and give you those tools to be able to do that analysis. At the all characteristics report, this one will include more people than the baseline report because this is everybody that you receive during your provide services to during your reporting period. As I mentioned earlier, states have separate reporting periods for CCG. So if you have any questions about what your state reporting period is, you can go to our website. We provided the link in the chat window, and you can see what your state reporting period is. So this is a snapshot of all the participants served by the community action agencies during that cycle. That would include those who came in for the very first time. So if you look at the actual report, we do have for every one of our reports, we have a definition at the top that talks about what the report is trying to gather, gives some additional definitions, and then when needed, we give links to what additional information you might need, like for here, to see when you would be doing your report. For this, we ask for the name of the local agency, and then we do have, this would be an automated field. It would be generated by your, what was traditionally known as the CCG Section E and F report. So the total non-CCG resources would be pulled from a different section of the report, as would all the CCG funds allocated, and then we'll have the total FY 2018 funds in your agency and then at your state. This is a function of the current CCGIS Access database that many of you at the local level may not know about. We hope that you do see this because I know that when I was at a state and at a local level, this was a really useful report for me to have pinned to my cubicle wall. So if I had any questions about, you know, what were the total resources in our community action agency and how many people did we serve and what their characteristics were, it was all here. There isn't a change other than the types of participants and individuals and families that we're getting between the baseline report and the all characteristics report. But we have updated categories within these reports. So that is something that's important for you to look through. What we did is that we researched the common reporting systems that were being used at community action agencies and the common federal funding sources and other funding sources, and looked at what the questions were that they were gathering on the characteristics and demographics. And then we also had lengthy conversations with the ROMA work group, as well as many of you during sessions, listening sessions at conferences, to talk about what is important for you to tell your own story. This is data that you shouldn't just use to send a report and then never think about. This is you telling what's happening in your communities at the individual and family level. So we hope that you look through all of these and you provide some information to us about what you think really works well and what you have questions on. Next, we're going to go to the report services list. This is a brand new list that we have. And why we created this is that we had since 2012, when we first started talking about ROMA Next Generation, a lot of you ROMA trainers talked to us about the fact that the national performance indicators included outputs, that they included services and not true outcomes. So when we went through this process of looking at every data point, we wanted to ensure that we could clarify how things should be structured. So we removed the outputs, and mostly those were services, and created a services list so that we can eventually tell the story of how we connect people to services to outcomes. These services are in the 6 domains of services that match throughout all the reports. So you still have the employment, education, income, housing, health. We also have an added one for support services. So these are services provided to support agency efforts in employment, education, housing, and health that could have really triggers for multiple domains. So transportation is one, health is another one. And then we talk about civic engagement. So what does this service list look like? We're going to give you an example of employment. I do want to reiterate that we are using employment as an example, but that's not because we're trying to push towards employment-only services. It was just the first one that we wanted to really be able to define. So for this, we have employment domain. Underneath here, we have categories such as apprenticeships and internships. We have youth summer work placements. We have skills training, and we know there can be many different skill trainings that you'll use for employment. So we have vocational training classes, on-the-job skills training, etc. As Barbara had said before, we have different reports on how to collect this information. Anything that's in blue is what local agencies would collect. We went back and forth and really discussed, what was important for us to know at the service level. And we initially started to create this by counting the number of services provided, but then we realized that could be really confusing. So where we landed is that we're counting the unduplicated number of individuals receiving services. So on this example, you'll see that we have the name of the agency reported. We show that this is for Goal 1, and then we have our employment service, youth summer work placement. And we see that 14 unduplicated individuals took place in a youth summer work placement program. We have 4 individuals who took place in vocational training classes. Now, those 4 individuals may have received 20 classes over the time frame. That's something that you'll collect, but only reported here is the number of individuals accessing these services. Now we're going to transition to the national performance indicators for the individuals and families. What we wanted to do here is we wanted to be able to document the outcomes for the people who receive services. That these indicators tell us how to measure our goals. We really looked at what we were doing for targeting, what we were looking for as baseline information, that we significantly revised the number of national performance indicators. As I mentioned earlier, that we removed some because they were really in the services, and in other ways that they weren't telling the story that we needed to tell. Some questions that I know that many of you have received is, with this new system, if there is an outcome measure that was traditionally reported and not reported, does the local agency have to collect that anymore? We say absolutely, that this is about telling your story, that you may have a wonderful youth dental program that has great successes. We still want you to collect that information, tell that story. It just wouldn't be reported in the national system. So let's talk about how this is structured. With employment, following our employment examples, we have an example of one of the indicators, job attainment. The number and percentage of unemployed individuals who, 1, obtain jobs up to a living wage. I want to show that we don't define living wage, that we let the local agencies define that. And this is just one example. We also have outcome indicators that talk about obtaining jobs without living wage. But in this example, we say first become self-employed as a result of community action agency services, who maintain existing employment for at least 90 days, and who maintain existing employment for at least 180 days. The timing is important for us, that we want to be able to see what happens over time with the individuals and families that we serve. That at one time we had talked about trying to follow up 270 days, which matches the WIOA, but that we realized that that was not lined up with a lot of the community action agencies. And so we decided that we would land on the 90 days and the 180 days. So on the reporting, this should be very familiar to most of you in how you would report the national performance indicators. We have on the left-hand side the list of the national performance indicators. What we ask for is the number of participants served in the program. So in this example, we have 145 who obtained employment. Then we say the number targeted. These are the number of participants expected to achieve the outcome in reporting period. You should be setting your targets before the year starts. You should have an understanding about what your success rate should be in community action agencies. Again, CCAPs and ROMA Trainers, you know the baseball analogy, that we're looking at where we can be successful, and we know that it takes time to be able to make these influences. So this is your target. Then we show the number who actually achieved. In this example, we targeted 56, but actually achieved 61. So our percentage of achieving the outcome in the reporting period, which is 42, that's over the number who actually started. And then we have the planning accuracy, that we succeeded above what we had projected, and so our planning accuracy over our target was 109%. These are auto-calculated fields, so you don't have to worry about how to do the calculations. You just enter in the information on these forms, and it will be calculated for you. So I'm going to turn it over to Barbara to go more in depth on one of our favorite subjects, targeting.
Hello again, and I think that we're going to need your help most in this section. This is the area where we're getting most of the questions about is how do we set targets? What do we use targets for? Why do we set targets? Do we need to explain the needs assessment and strategic planning process. So there's a lot of questions about setting targets. So I think if we could just look very simply at the questions, the basic questions that we ask before starting a program. How many people do you think you're going to serve? What services are you going to give them? What do you think is going to happen? And how many do you think are going to achieve the goal? So those basic questions that planners and that agency staff are involved in at all times. And then at the end of the program to say, how many did you actually serve and how many achieved the expected goal? It's really important for you to be able to help agencies understand this. If you don't know where you're going, it's difficult for you to know what route you're going to take and what you need along the way. A lot of times people say, well, this is just about the reporting. Well, it's not just about reporting, but certainly we have to collect data in order to allow this to get turned into information so that we can analyze it and know what's working. How well did we do? So in looking at the comparison between the targets and the actual, you can see what did you actually do, and how well did it come? How close did it come to your projections? Was there something unexpected that happened that had an impact on your performance? Were there differences in the population who achieved outcomes and those who didn't? And there are lots of other questions that you can ask about how does this year's performance compare to last year's performance? What were the trends? What did they tell us? Are there other agencies that do similar work or other partners that do similar work? How are they doing compared to what we did? And based on our analysis, then we'll be able to think about performance management activities. How do we, what do we need to do? Different outreach? Do we need to reach different people? Develop different services? Do we need to change the service delivery process? Do we need different partners or different community approaches? This is about a continuous improvement process, organizational learning from your own data, using your data to do better, to increase the impact for families, individuals, and communities. And you'll be asking to set targets on both the family level and on the community level. What do you expect to achieve, and then what did you actually achieve? And these will all be, as Jenae said, auto-calculated. The math will all be done. You just have to say, this is what we expected to happen, and this is what we do, what actually did happen. So I'm going to turn this over now to Jeannie to talk a little bit about stability measures.
Thank you, Barbara. So one of the things that the ROMA Next Generation Working Group and all the national partners tried to look at when we were developing the family national performance indicators was a way to really get at showing the significant change that happens in the lives of many of the individuals that community action touches. And I think we certainly think that the outcome around getting a job, obtaining a job, getting safe housing, increasing, educational levels, that those are all very positive outcomes, but that there are often many results that agencies help folks achieve on the road to those longer-term outcomes, and a lot of that has to do with stability. And so we were searching for a way to measure stability improvements, and there's no silver bullet out there to do that. And so what we've ended up doing and are interested in is having the field look at the next three options that I'm going to go over. So these are proposals about how one might measure stability in community action and be able to show a large number of lives changed in a community action agency. The goal here would be to try to measure sort of you know, the significant number of lives that community action has touched. So the first option is to look at the number or percent of individuals who achieve one or more outcomes as identified by the NPIs in the various domains. So what this is putting forward as a measure of stability is the unduplicated number of people who achieve one or more positive outcomes. So if you look on the next slide, we talk a little bit about how you would measure this. This would not be an aggregated number of all the NPIs, all the positive outcomes. That would lead to double counting, because we all know that we have individuals who achieve multiple outcomes. We may have folks that, you know, get affordable and safe housing, as well as obtain a job for more than 90 or 180 days. So if a person got both of those positive outcomes in this scenario, they would only be counted once. This would require that agencies keep an unduplicated count of people who achieve one or more outcomes. It could also lead us to be able to do some additional analysis on the number of people that achieve 2 or 3 outcomes, and do some comparison on the levels of stability or the number of improvements that we get from different programs across multiple outcomes. So that is stability indicator option 1. And then there's a second option that we're proposing, and again, these are all for feedback. This is a place where we really want to hear from agencies, from the ROMA trainers, what you like, what you don't like about these options, how they would work in your agency or how they might not work, or you may be already doing something in this space that's even better, and we certainly want to hear about that. But this second option is about sustained impact, and it's the number and percentage of individuals engaged with the community action agency who achieved and maintained for 6 months the ability to meet basic needs. And then we have a submeasure that goes a little bit deeper with this idea. The number and percentage of individuals engaged with the community action agency who achieved and maintained for 6 months the ability to meet basic needs during the initial contact year, and then another one in subsequent contact years, 2 through 5. And you might first ask, well, what do some of these words mean, engaged and individuals, and how would we determine basic needs? We've outlined some high-level responses to some of those definitions. Engaged with would mean having multiple program-related contacts with the CAA. For individuals, we would propose to include both program participants and all members in a household, so we can really get at the scale here and the intensity of the positive outcome. And then we would have to identify some tools to get at what ability to meet basic needs might mean. Can that be validated through some scales for energy insecurity or housing or food? So that would be something we'd have to work out, and if folks have ideas or have feedback about that, we certainly would like to hear them. And then the third option, a little bit different approach than the first two, the number and percentage of individuals engaged with the community action agency who report improved financial well-being. And the way that we would measure this is we would use some work that the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has done on financial well-being scales. Many of you are familiar with some of CFPB's work around financial empowerment. You're using some of their curriculum to improve financial capability. They have done a pretty extensive research project on how you measure financial well-being. They have a way that you can use 5 survey questions or 10 survey questions. It's validated, it's reliable, it can be done quickly. You can see the questions there are certainly questions that address many of the issues that community action works with. So that would be a possible way to measure stability, to demonstrate stability by looking at financial well-being. So I just want to remind folks that you can provide, type in questions, and we really like for you to do that as we're moving along so that we can think about answering the questions that we think are maybe the most people would have. And so please submit those. And I'm going to hand this back over to Jenae.
Actually, it's going to Barbara.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
That's fine. We're just going to bring up the civic engagement and community involvement domain again, but now we're going to look at it on the family level because we're at the family level discussion. And so just like in any of the other family level indicators, in this one, the agency is going to be looking at its own participants. Remember, in the community level one, it was looking at community level people with low income that they may not have a relationship with. In this one, this is folks that they have a relationship with. Participants are gaining skills or knowledge or resources related to leadership development training or instructions in board roles and responsibilities. These are things that when we ask what do you do in the arena of civic engagement and community involvement with your participants, these are things that actually build the individual skills. And so that's why they're family level indicators. And so there'd be the increase of the skills related to the program. So the number of participants who increase skills, knowledge, ability, resources to enable them to work with community action to improve conditions in the community. And then we know that as folks volunteer in the community, become engaged in their community, they take leadership roles, and so one of the indicators is about improving leadership skills and being engaged in leadership roles. The last piece is about improving their social networks. One of the things that happens when participants are involved, civic engagement activities are created, is that there are social networks that are built, there are connections that help people move out of poverty, find a job, find resources, find help with lots of things in their community. And then we have an other skills opportunity so that you can enter something that we haven't thought about. Switching gears just real briefly here, we're going to come back to talk about agency capacity. Remember Denise talked about that we no longer have an agency goal. And so this is your opportunity to talk to us a little bit about how well you think this expanded CSBG expenditure report form is going to help you to talk about the agency capacity, activities, and outcomes that used to be in Goal 5. So you'll see on the two documents that you'll be looking at for this survey are the expenditures and agency capacity report and the resources administered and generated by the network report. So the expenditure report, you'll see this looks like the old Section E, the current Section E, and it includes some word changes. You'll see number 8, coordinated service delivery, has replaced the term self-sufficiency as a domain because it was clear that many other domains roll together to be self-sufficiency, and what was really being reported here was services that included multiple domains. But you'll see there also as number 10 is added, it's agency capacity. And also administration has been brought up into this table rather than being at the bottom of the table. But the agency capacity on this table will show the dollar amounts that were spent, the CSBG dollars that were spent on agency capacity. And on the next table, you'll see that it's identifying what kinds of activities were funded by CSBG. Community needs assessment, strategic planning, data management, training and technical assistance, and other. And then also the other two questions in this agency capacity get at how agency capacity building is happening as represented by hours of training or mentoring or other kinds of support activities for board members, agency staff, and volunteers, and then information about certification. Those were things that were in the old Goal 5 report. So there's a place for them. The other piece of this reporting is about resources administered, and this is sort of similar to the Section F report. There's just the one change there where the number of volunteer hours is being included here. So, so you see that we haven't lost a focus on wanting to know about volunteer hours and the value of them. We've just put them in a different place. Okay, so now I'm turning this back over to Jeannie and Denise to tie it all together.
All right, so thank you, Barbara. So we have a survey number 5, which will be about tying it all together. And this survey will try to look at the connections between all the components that we've just talked about. So we have talked about information about the people that we serve. We have new information about the services and strategies that we're providing, and information about the outcomes and the results. And this is where we begin to move into the idea of analyzing the information differently and being able to answer new questions and provide a different level of information about our work. And so if you look at that, what we'll do in a variety of different ways is that we'll look at community action has achieved a certain type of result for many individuals and families and communities, and we have the information about individuals and families in the baseline and the all-client demographic reports. We have looking at delivering and implementing certain services and strategies, and that information lives in the services and strategies report. And then we did all of this using certain resources, which is available in the expenditure and the resources administered and generated by the CSBG network report. So this is going to be a new aspect for all of us, and we're very interested in what folks may have to say about analyzing this information together, and that's the kind of information we'll be collecting in the Tying It All Together survey.
And I hope, this is Denise, I hope that you see that we've talked about each of these elements. And again, as we kind of started off today's session, as ROMA trainers and as CCAPs, I hope that you can see which of these elements perhaps that you think you can really be a lead on to really do a deep dive into. We're going to be doing follow-up webinars next week. And have we talked about the NCAP piece? Because a number of these folks will be at that conference. That's probably something that we're going to be talking about. Well, since I've already let the cat out of the bag, but I know people already got emails. Next Thursday during the NCAP conference, we will be doing an in-person piece. And I know many CCAPs and ROMA trainers are at that event. Please come up and talk to us. I know we'll talk a bit more about this, but we are needing all of you to figure out where can you be the lead in these scenarios. And I hope that you will take the time to do a deep dive, listen to the webinars next week, and follow up with us if you have particular questions.
I think it's also important to note that one of the biggest misconceptions about ROMA Next Generation is that it's only on the outcome.
Yeah.
And so we hope that you get from today that it is on every aspect of tying the Community Action Agency's story, from the resources to the individuals to the services, strategies, and the outcomes. So we're going to talk about next steps. We, as you know, have started our webinar series. We had our first webinar that we recorded and we posted for everybody to listen to on March 3rd. We are doing that in-person event March 17th. at NCAP. We do really hope that you can come and speak with us. We think it's going to be a really great time to dialogue, talk about all these really great ideas. I want to note that we are going to be taking time at the end of this webinar to go over some of the questions that you sent to us, but we know that we're not going to be able to get to everything, so we are putting together some frequently asked questions document that will be posted to our website as well. We know that as I've been looking at the questions that you all have been submitting, you are the experts in this field, so you're helping us identify some areas that we need to be able to explain more. The full schedule for all the websites or the webinars have been posted to our website. I do want to skip to slide 85 to talk about that. So next week on March 14th, we'll be doing a deeper dive into the National Theory of Change and Goals. In addition to the surveys and posting the webinars, we have developed discussion guides to really help facilitate conversations that you're having within local agencies, at statewide meetings, and regional meetings as well. So we'll have a discussion guide per topic. So we'll have one for the theory of change and national goals. We'll also have one for the community level work, which is March 15th. Then during the same time as our NCAP, so for those people who can't enjoy us in person, you'll get to be able to meet with us virtually. We'll be going more into the individual and family level work. And then finally, we have it tying all together on March 22nd. So what you can do to help us, it is so key that we hear from everybody through messaging, that we need to be able to have all community action agencies know that this is out there, have them be able to access resources such as NASCSP partnerships, all of you on the phone as CCAPs and ROMA trainers to be able to help them understand what this really means. As states, you need to be talking about timelines. We have cues in here for when the reportings will begin, projected, but we know that it's going to take a while to build the systems into being able to collect this information. So now it's time to be talking about what that really means. Also, we know it's going to take a lot of training and technical assistance. This isn't something that we can just release and say, here it is, now figure it out. We are going to be putting together a national training and technical assistance plan. We need regional approaches and state approaches on how to really get everybody to understand what this change means for them and really take the focus away from just reporting and make it more about performance management. So we need coordination between the state office, state associations, RPICs, the CCAPs, and the ROMA trainers as well. You can contact us about any information or questions that you have. Many of you have already started to contact us through our ROMA Next Generation 2016 @gmail.com account. We tried to find something longer, but we couldn't. But this is going to all NASCSP staff so that we can ensure that as you have feedback to us, such as what we had from the response yesterday about putting together a document that has everything together. And I want to note that that PDF table of contents is hyperlinked, so you can just hover over it and it will take you to that exact document in the 160-page document. So those kinds of suggestions, please let us know. At this time, I'm going to turn it back over to Jovita to talk about some other next steps while we look over the frequently asked questions and start to answer those.
Thanks, Jenae. As the panelists review your questions, I'd like to encourage you to take a moment to just digest what has been presented. We know it was a lot. And if you have additional questions or you have yet to submit a question, please feel free to enter your question in the chat box. When entering your question, please note the topic and the slide related to your question, as well as the panelist if there is one specifically that you would like to have respond. Once again, if we're unable to get to your question, we will be producing a FAQ to respond to all questions that have been asked. Also, just want to emphasize that the review of the components of ROMA Next Generation is crucial, and this initial comment period provided by NASCSP begins March 3rd, or began March 3rd, and will continue on until April 1st. It will be followed by the official Office of Management and Budget clearance process. Please also keep an eye out for the, once again, NASCSP developed surveys for each ROMA Next Generation component. These surveys will serve as the primary method for gathering critical feedback and provide a framework for engaging with the various components. So once again, there is an email address you can use to provide feedback to NASCSP or any lingering questions you may have after this webinar. But we would encourage you to, if you can, insert all of your comments and questions in the survey. As was noted earlier, the survey will provide you an opportunity to respond at a high level to the components as they're presented as a whole, but you'll also have the opportunity to provide feedback on the specific sections and questions or pieces of each of the ROMA Next Generation components. And I do want to emphasize once again the webinars that are coming up. The first one coming up next week is on Monday, March 14th. That's going to be taking place from 2 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. It will be covering the theory of change and goals and tying it all together. So once again, how all of the components fit together before taking a deep dive into community level work. That happens on Tuesday, March 15th from 2 to 4 p.m. Then we'll move on to demographics and characteristics, as well as individual and family level MPIs and services. That's Thursday, March 17th. Please mark your calendars, taking place from 2 to 3:30 p.m. Eastern. And then finally on Tuesday, March 22nd, from 2 to 3:30 p.m. Eastern, funding and expenditure reporting and tying it all together. So we're going to take a moment, and I'd encourage you, those who have downloaded the PowerPoint presentation, just look back through, and if you have any questions or comments or concerns, this is your opportunity to speak with the national leadership as it relates to the components that have been released.
Thanks, Davida. We're ready.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and start with some of the questions that we received, and just to make sure everyone knows, we are compiling questions that we don't answer today into a frequently asked questions, so you'll be expecting notification on that. Our first question is related to software at the local level. Any thought on investing in the development of local use software that will help us with this work?
So that's a great question, and one that we get a lot. This is Jenae from NASCSP. NASCSP doesn't endorse any software program, but we have done queries to our network about what software systems people are using, and we have that information. We'll be sending out another peer-to-peer request shortly about that. And part of what we wanted to ensure with this open initial comment period is that this also got to all of the vendors so that they could see the changes that were being made. So we don't invest or endorse any local software system, but we do talk about what is needed in those systems. And that's one of the things that we had started the conversation with the partnership to really talk about as we gather this information. For example, on the demographics report, you're not going to be collecting in your system an age range of 0 to 8. You're going to be collecting birth dates. So we want to at least provide a data dictionary on what methodology is that's going to be needed for those systems. In addition to that, with the President's budget, there was some language about how some states could possibly do some investments that I'm going to have Jeannie give a little bit more information about.
Thanks, Jenae. So we certainly appreciate that some of what we're talking about will require systems changes and system upgrades. It just depends on where the Community Action Agency or the state is at, what their status is right now with technology. Technology is, I always want to say, part of the equation, but leadership and will to use information to manage from is really a bigger part of the equation. But we do appreciate that that systems issues cost money. And so in the President's budget this year, we did include a proposal to allow states to use additional amount of money to increase their admin discretionary percentage to invest in the modernization and interoperability of systems. And the idea was that that money is going to come out of the pot that the state gets, obviously, but that it might be more efficient for the state and the community action agencies to work together on sort of a statewide approach and allow the state to invest some money in that than each agency having to do something independently. Now, that was just a proposal. Congress has to enact the budget, and they'd have to add that language. It would change the CSBG statute, so they'd have to enact the language. We don't know if they'll do that, but it was our attempt to sort of recognize and try to get some flexibility into the system to address this. We're also working on some other things related to partnerships to think about how we might address this issue. I think it is a real issue, and we're going to have to work together to figure it out, but I really feel like we can. I feel like technology and the world is in a different place than maybe it was 10 or 15 years ago when we really looked at this seriously as a network. So.
Okay, our next question is related to data reporting collection. When is actual data reporting collection and reporting with the new NPIs expected to be implemented? Will there be funding to help community action agencies convert and update their systems?
So I think that we just answered the last part of that about funding. The first part about timing is really important. If I were at a community action agency, that's the first thing I would be asking when or if I was out of state, I would want to know, when am I going to have to make changes? How long do I have to train my staff? I think that's another big piece of this. And one positive story I think we have to tell here, and I really would like the CCAPs and the Certified ROMA Trainers to help tell this story, is that we do have time for ramp up. On the web page, on the NASCSP web page, when you land on the ROMA Next Generation, there's a great little chart, and on that chart, it talks about when states' reporting periods are, and it will tell you if, basically what it boils down to is we're talking about fiscal year 18, and that does matter if you're a state that goes on a state fiscal year or a federal fiscal year. So if you're a state that goes on the federal fiscal year, you would have to start reporting October 2017, or you'd have to be ready. You wouldn't report until the end of the year, but you'd have to be ready and start collecting data and tracking clients and recording outcomes under this new approach on October 2017. If you're a state that goes on a state fiscal year, it would be July of 2018, and am I missing one?
2017 to they go
right, July of 2017 to 6/30 of 18. I'm sorry, and then we might have some folks that are on a different year.
We have a calendar year report.
Right, and then it would be on the calendar year. There's just a few states. January 1 of 18 to 12/31 of 18. So basically, I think about fiscal year, state or fiscal year, or calendar year 18. So if let's say you're operating on the federal fiscal year and you'd have to go and start on October 2017, this gives you over a year to get your systems and your staff trained and ready for this. If you look at the calendar that we put out about the clearance, we're very hopeful that we'll get clearance from OMB before the end of the year, at the end of this year. Hopefully November would be a very good time. But we're going to know what these reporting forms look like before that, because we're going to, when we get into June and July, I'm hoping that we've had such good feedback early during this initial period and during the first 60-day comment period that, we're not making, we've gotten good feedback and we're nearly there. So folks are getting closer to knowing exactly what things will look like. So I feel like the message on this, to sort of summarize, is there's time to get people trained and there's time to make system changes. We're not asking for this reporting to be October of 2016. And so that, I think if we can make sure that message gets out to everybody, that will dial down the stress and create space for good conversation. If people are all hyped up about, oh my gosh, we're going to have to do this in 4 or 5 months, they're not going to be able to focus on the content. We've got time here to get the content right. We've got to move swiftly. Don't get me wrong, we've got to move swiftly, but we have time before we actually deploy and start collecting data.
I do want to point out that we only showed page 1 of the state reporting period. So if you're not seeing your state, your calendar year, and you're on page 2. So when you go to it on our website, you'll see yourself represented. So Oklahoma, Texas, you're on the chart. There you are. Okay, next question.
Okay, next question is related to the individual and family NPIs. If an agency has an employment program but in the past has not done follow-up at 90 and 180 days, is it required?
So this actually brings up something that we should have mentioned before. As with the current CCGIS, we're not requiring that you report on every indicator, every characteristic, demographic that you do, because you may not do that. So you only, the menu option, you choose what you can report on. What I would say for this agency is that even if you haven't done it in the past, it's an important step to move towards. And so as you start changing your system, it would be good for you to start to collect and do follow-up at 90 days and 180 days so that you can really tell the story about what happens. You could help somebody secure a job one day and then they lose it the next. And that's important for us to know, what are those triggers, what are those barriers?
Our next question is related to the characteristics reports. Is first come or before they receive service using contract year or the lifetime of the agency? I say this because agencies that have been using data systems for a long period of time can have repeat rates as high as 70 to 80% if you consider lifespan. Should this be limited to 3 years or 5 years? Many of our clients have been using our systems since late 1990s.
So since this is a new process, what we're saying is starting with this new reporting period, you will collect when the individuals and families come to see you for the first time. And that those who have been on the system, you know, that's sad to hear that they've been on the system since the late 1990s, but that they would be captured in the all individuals and families that have served.
Now we'll move to the stability indicator options. The question reads, we've been using a client outcome matrix across several domains and showing that stability is achieved when client is above prevention line within X number of domains. Showing movement from dependence towards independence is in the matrix. Is this their independent ability to meet basic needs within 6 months or maintain basic needs via assistance for 6 months?
So it sounds to me like the individual asking this question, their agency has put a lot of thought into some effort here. This is exactly the kind of feedback we need. So what I would ask is that this individual in the survey give us some real detailed information about what they're doing, because this might be a better option than the 3 that we proposed, or this might be a good way to inform or refine one of the 3 options that we put forward. So I think this is a great example of how we need this deep experience and skill brought to the work that we're doing so that we can make it richer. So please contribute that information in the survey comments.
Okay, our next question is, what leverage does ROMA Next Generation have that will ensure analysis of data will take place?
I'm wondering, Lauren, why you didn't skip that question. Because we only have 1 minute and we could have just skipped that, right? Well, we're ethical. We live our vision and values here, and so, you know, I'll take a stab at it. But I think this analysis piece, you know, we're still refining it. We want feedback about it. I think that analysis looks different at the local level, the state level, and the federal level. So certainly the analysis that a local agency does is going to be much richer, much more detailed, and is hopefully going to be done on a regular basis so that what the agency learns they can apply to improving programs, and that's not just a once-a-year kind of thing, that happens on a regular basis. So nobody is going to want us to dictate what all that analysis looks like. At the state level, I think there's a little more levers. I think the states can think about looking to see what kind of analysis agencies are doing, and you know, that would be part of what might be part of a monitoring approach and that kind of thing. And then at the federal level, I think we would begin to look at what kind of analysis or what kind of checking on analysis the state is doing. So, you know, all of these performance management pieces are going to work together. I think we do want to get at some basic analysis before we get this done, but our intention is not to outline every tiny little piece of analysis that we think should be done at every level. That's really not appropriate.
I think some of the powerful ways that we've seen the data used is that we have some wonderful agencies out there who put together community action agency reports, annual reports, brochures, and websites that really spotlight what your outcomes are and talk about that. And you can use that to educate and advocate on the Hill. You know, that's what helps us get our funding. It is key for you to be working with your tripartite boards and be able to really use this information across the board. So the leverage, I think, is really changing how we talk about it. That this initial comment period, it is heavy on the reporting form so that we can clearly show you and have you tell us what works and doesn't work. But the analysis is going to come through the trainings and the conferences. So we have run out of time. We have received all of your questions, and we will be putting together a frequently asked questions document and posting those. Our conversation does not stop here. Please do not hesitate to contact us. One thing that we mentioned to the state association, states, and our picks is that if you have a conference coming up, if you have a webinar series come up, invite us to the table, invite OCS, invite the partnership, invite NASCSP. We want to help you have these conversations because it is through your input that we can ensure that this is a very successful movement forward. So I want to thank everybody for their time on the webinar, and we look forward to speaking with you more over the next few weeks and beyond.
Thank you, guys.